So I have another question for you, and it'll be more of a snarky remark. Um, I don't want anything to do with guns. I don't want anything to do with that. And I've got my pepper spray. So I'm good to go. I don't need any of that hooey mumbo jumbo kung fu stuff. That's not me. I don't do that. So why should I come to your class if that's what you're going to be teaching me? Or is that what you're going to be teaching me?
That is actually an excellent question because we get it from all sides, right? Because we do a lot of martial arts here at our brick and mortar in our school, we hear it all the time. You know, in the martial arts world, it's well, I don't need to learn how to strike because I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm just going to take you down and choke you, right? And then you hear from the striker arts, kickboxing, karate, boxing, et cetera, and they're like, I don't need to learn any of that grappling stuff because I'm just going to knock you out before you even get close to me. And then you hear the same thing from the weapon arts, right? And they're just like, I'm just going to stab you and hit you with my stick and choke you out with my stick and do this and that. You'll never even get within a range of me, right? And you hear the same thing with firearms and everything else, right? And so I look at self-defense in a totality perspective. In fact, it's funny. One of our hashtags, if you will, for the stuff that we do is we call it original MMA, because that was something that Bruce Lee was doing with Jeet Kune Do. They were sparring and hitting and throwing and grappling in the 60s. They were doing mixed martial arts before it was a term, right? It was just
Wow.
fight. Yeah, it was just fighting. It was just, let's learn how to defend ourselves. You know what I mean? And in that perspective, they also had this concept of like, I don't want to have something sneak up on me, not just a person, but like a technique that I've never seen before. And I don't know how to counter, right? And so I think that when it comes to self-defense and the totality perspective of self-defense is we want to have, it's like being a parent, we want to have a Batman utility belt, right? Of many options, right? To be able to discipline our kids or our opponents, right? So pepper spray is a great tool. It's another great option. Kubaton, another great option, right? Flexible weapons, as you know, one of my personal favorites, another great option, right? Projectiles, right? We need to understand projectiles. We need to understand edged weapons. We need to understand edged weapons in an offensive method and in a defensive or counteroffensive method, right? Like we have to understand all those things. And it doesn't mean we have to be great at any one of them, honestly, in my opinion, right? But if we at least have a little taste of all of it, kind of like going back to school. When you go back into school, you're doing math and you're doing history and you're doing English and you're doing all these different subjects, right? But a lot of times I'm like, I'm going to be an artist. That was me, right? I was like, I'm going to be an artist. In fact, I'm going to be a comic book artist, right? Why do I need algebra? Why do I need history, right? What is this? You know what I mean? So, and it just happened to be that I was really good at math and liked math, but then you go, give me chemistry and all that. And I'm like, well, why am I doing this, right? Well, it's part of the fundamentals. It's part of the base education and curriculum, right? And that utility belt needs to be viewed the same way, right? You might not need algebra or you might not need chemistry or biology or American history or world history or whatever it is, right? But being able to carry on an educated conversation with somebody else and understanding how to relate to them in that conversation is part of what that education is about. Learning teamwork, all these different things. It's what part of that education is about. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with your self-defense, right? You might not want to become a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. Fine, that's great. You don't have to be, but you need to learn to get out of positions. You need to learn how to escape a choke, right? Things that a general person might know and might be able to put you in, or somebody that's bigger and stronger can just try to hold you down, right? So why not learn that? And I'll go a little step further to get on point with the question. When you are dealing with tools and your utility belt, the problem is that if that's your only thing that you're relying on, and you can't get to it or deploy it or it's taken away from you, what do you do? Right.
Right.
And so that's where we go back to, hey, I got to know how to use these fingers and these claws, and I got to know how to hold and grip, and I got to know how to shove away and move me away, and kind of all those little things, I think, which makes a big difference. So when we spar and when we do contact and things like that, we talk about it often enough as being a conversation, like going to grade school. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? How you doing? Right? You know what I mean? And we're carrying that conversation on back and forth. And when you have somebody that can't carry on that conversation, right, it doesn't always go so well, right? So
Yeah.
then you've got to dumb it down a little bit so that they can, interject. You're hoping they interject a little bit so that you get to, work with that conversation a little bit. And when they don't, then it makes it kind of a challenge, right? And so I think our self-defense is no different, right? So I think having that education, even in a base layer, even in that grade school kind of concept, middle school, high school, right? We're not going into specialties yet, right? But we understand, how to defend ourselves when somebody grabs us or somebody starts punching at us or somebody throws us to the floor or whatever it is, right? And I mean, we talk about it all the time with edge weapons because it's one of my favorites. But let's say you're an edge weapon carrier and your EDC is on your right pocket, but you're pinned down on your right side and you can't get to your tool that you use every day and know how well to implement. What do you do? Right.
Right. Right.
So,
Absolutely.